It all started with this strange feeling, like a dull ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. I couldn't explain it, but it felt like I'd swallowed something sharp, and it got stuck. Kelly, my wife, had been acting odd for weeks. She always had her phone in her hand, like it was glued there, and even her laugh sounded different, sharper, not the same as before. I kept telling myself I was imagining things, that maybe she was just stressed from work. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. One evening, she said she'd be working late again. I was at home, flipping through channels on the TV, not really watching anything. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. For once, it wasn't locked. It was almost like fate wanted me to see it. The name Aaron popped up on the screen, and my stomach turned. Aaron? Who the hell was Aaron? I hesitated. Every decent part of me screamed, "Don't do it. Trust her. Be better than this." But there was another part of me, a darker side, that couldn't let it go. I picked up her phone and opened the message. "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you." My hands shook as I scrolled through the messages. What I saw felt like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just one text. There were photos, voice notes, and long conversations. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was in a full-blown affair. Every work late or girls' night out had been a lie. Kelly had been meeting this guy, Aaron, in hotels and bars. It wasn't just physical. They talked about their connection, their chemistry. They were sneaking around, laughing about the thrill of it. I stood there frozen, staring at the phone. My heart felt like it was shattering into pieces. My first instinct was to throw the phone against the wall, to scream, to break something. But I didn't. Not yet. I needed to be smart. If Kelly was going to lie to my face, I needed proof. Cold, undeniable proof. A car door slammed outside, snapping me out of my daze. Kelly was home. I put the phone back where she'd left it and sat down at the kitchen table, my mind spinning. She walked in, smiling like everything was perfect. "Hey, babe," she said, leaning in to kiss me. I froze. I could smell cologne on her, one that wasn't mine. "How was work?" I asked, my voice tight. "Oh, the usual," she replied, taking off her coat. "I'm starving. Did you eat yet?" I didn't answer. I just watched her. Every word she said sounded fake. Kelly, the woman I'd shared my life with, was lying to my face without a second thought. She acted like everything was normal, like I was too blind to ever figure her out. That night, as she slept next to me, I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. My thoughts were racing. I couldn't just let this go. I needed a plan, a way to make her lies unravel, piece by piece. The next morning, Kelly was in the kitchen, humming as she made coffee. She looked like the perfect wife. It made me sick to my stomach. I couldn't stop wondering if she'd already texted Aaron good morning. I forced myself to play along, acting like everything was fine, but inside, I was seething. I called in sick to work that day. Instead of going in, I played detective. I searched through everything Kelly had left lying around. Her email, her planner, even the receipts in her purse. It all painted a clear picture. Dates circled in red on her calendar matched the nights she claimed to be working late or out with friends. I found a travel confirmation for a fancy hotel downtown. It wasn't a place we'd ever been to together. The more I dug, the more disgusted I felt. Kelly hadn't just been cheating. She'd been careful about it, weaving her lies so smoothly I hadn't noticed until now. By the end of the day, I had all the proof I needed: messages, photos, dates, and receipts. That evening, Kelly came home like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, smiling as she set the table for dinner. "How was your day?" she asked, like she didn't have a care in the world. "It was fine," I said, forcing myself to sound calm. "You?" "Oh, great. I'm heading out Saturday, by the way. Maggie and I are doing a spa day." "A spa day?" "Right." I nodded, pretending to believe her. "Sounds fun." "You deserve it," I said, my voice steady. She smiled, oblivious to the fact that her perfect little lie had fallen apart. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept going over everything in my head, planning my next move. Bursting out in anger felt too easy, too satisfying. I wanted her lies to collapse on their own, to leave her with no way out. Saturday morning, Kelly packed an overnight bag. She was in a hurry, brushing her hair in front of the mirror. I might stay the night if it gets late, she said casually. Maggie and I could just grab a hotel nearby. Makes sense, right? Sure, I said, forcing a smile. Text me if you do. She kissed me on the forehead and walked out the door. As her car disappeared down the street, I grabbed my keys. I already knew where she was going. The night before, I'd called the hotel where she and Aaron had met before. They confirmed a reservation under her name. When I arrived, I parked where I could see the entrance. An hour later, I saw her walk in hand with Aaron. He was younger than me, maybe late 20s, with a cocky grin that made my blood boil. They laughed like they didn't have a care in the world. I stayed in my car, watching. My fists clenched so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to storm in there, to confront them both. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I snapped photos of them walking into the hotel together. Proof. Hours passed, and I waited. When Kelly came home the next day, she acted like everything was fine. Hey, babe, she said, tossing her bag onto the floor. Miss me? I stared at her. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice calm. How was the spa? Her smile didn't even falter. Oh, amazing. Maggie and I had the best time. We should go together sometime. I nodded, my jaw tightening. Sounds great, I said. But before that, we need to talk about Aaron. Her smile froze, and for the first time, I saw panic in her eyes. Her words hung in the air, heavy and incriminating. She caught herself too late, realizing what she just admitted. Her face flushed red as the truth began to crack through her facade. Needed to what? I asked, my voice cold and sharp. Go ahead, finish that thought. Kelly pressed her lips into a tight line, avoiding my eyes. You don't understand, she muttered under her breath, her voice barely audible. You're right, I said, standing up. I don't understand. I don't understand how someone can lie so easily to the person they supposedly love. How you can come home, kiss me like everything's fine, and act like you haven't just spent the night with someone else. So, please, Kelly, help me understand. She stood there, silent, arms crossed defensively. She couldn't even look at me. The woman I had married, the kind and loving person I thought I knew, was gone. In her place stood someone I barely recognized, cold, distant, and unrepentant. After a long pause, I sighed. You know what? Don't bother. I've heard enough. I turned and headed to the bedroom. Grabbing a suitcase from the closet, I began to throw my clothes, shoes, and essentials into it. I didn't have a plan yet, didn't even know where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't stay here. Kelly followed me into the room, her voice rising. What are you doing? You're seriously just going to leave? You're not even going to listen to my side. I stopped packing and turned to face her. Your side? I laughed bitterly. Your side is nothing but lies. I've wasted enough time listening to them. Her tone shifted suddenly, her voice turning sharp and venomous. Fine, she snapped. Go ahead and leave. You think I care? You've been so checked out of this marriage anyway. Honestly, I'm not even surprised. You've been looking for an excuse to walk away. I clenched my fists at my sides, my anger boiling over. An excuse? My voice shook as I spoke. You think I wanted this? That I wanted to find out my wife was cheating on me? That I wanted to see you for who you really are? Her face hardened, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. The silence between us was heavy and suffocating, filled with words left unsaid. Finally, I zipped up the suitcase and walked toward the door. I'll send someone to get the rest of my things, I said without looking back. And don't even try to twist this around on me, Kelly. You did this. You ruined us. As I stepped outside, I half expected her to call after me, to beg me to stay or to apologize. But she didn't. Instead, she slammed the door behind me, the sound echoing into the quiet night. Walking away from that house, the home we had built together, felt surreal. The cold air hit my face, and with every step away from the door, I felt like I was shedding a life that no longer fit me. The suitcase in my hand wasn't just filled with clothes. It was packed with shattered dreams, broken trust, and the deep sting of betrayal. I climbed into my car, gripping the steering wheel tightly as my chest tightened with the weight of it all. Her words echoed in my head. You've been looking for an excuse. The audacity of it made my blood boil. I wasn't the one sneaking around. I wasn't the one lying. Yet, somehow, she had managed to paint herself as the victim in her twisted narrative. I drove aimlessly for a while before checking into a cheap motel on the edge of town. It was the kind of place with flickering neon signs and a faint musty smell. It wasn't much, but it was enough for now. I just needed to think, to breathe, to figure out what the hell to do next. That night, I lay on the stiff mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling. Sleep was impossible. My mind replayed every moment of our confrontation, every lie she'd ever told me, and every sign I had ignored. I thought about the woman I fell in love with, the vows we exchanged, the promises we made. For better or worse. What a joke. Sometime after midnight, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I ignored it at first, but it buzzed again. Reluctantly, I picked it up. It was Kelly. Her text was short and cold. Don't forget you still owe half the mortgage this month. I let out a bitter laugh, hollow and humorless. No apology. No regret. Just a reminder about money. It was almost impressive how quickly she shifted from fake innocence to outright callousness. The next day, I made my move. I called Mark, the lawyer who had helped with my parents' estate years ago. Mark was straightforward and no nonsense. If you've got proof of the affair, it'll work in your favor, he said. But don't expect this to be easy. Divorces rarely are. I sent him everything. The photos, the messages, the hotel confirmations. My hands trembled as I hit send. It felt like exposing a raw wound to the world, but there was no turning back now. Then, I made another call. This one wasn't planned, but as I stared at the evidence, something clicked. Kelly hadn't just betrayed me. She'd been using her job to cover up her affair. The texts and emails were filled with references to sneaking out of the office early and using work trips as excuses. Her boss sounded skeptical at first, but when I forwarded the evidence, his tone changed. "We'll handle this internally," he said curtly. I could almost hear him taking notes. That evening, Kelly called again. This time, I answered. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice flat. "You called my boss?" she hissed. "Are you out of your mind? Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I did what you forced me to do," I replied calmly. "You lied. You cheated. And you used your job to cover for it. If you didn't want your life falling apart, maybe you shouldn't have set it on fire." Her tone turned sharp. "Oh, don't give me that holier-than-thou crap. You think you're perfect? You're pathetic, Chris. Always whining about how hard you work, acting like some kind of martyr. Maybe if you'd paid attention to me, I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere." Her words cut deep, but I didn't let her see it. "Keep telling yourself that," I said. "But deep down, you know the truth. This isn't about me. It's about you and your choices." There was silence on the other end for a moment. Then, she laughed, a cold, hollow laugh. "You'll regret this," she said. "Mark my words, Chris. You haven't seen anything yet." The line went dead, and for the first time, I felt a chill run down my spine. Kelly wasn't just a liar. She was dangerous. I sat there in the dim motel room, her words echoing in my head. If she wanted a war, she'd just declared it. And I wasn't about to back down. The letter was unmistakable. Kelly's handwriting, a blend of swirls and exaggerated loops, was right there, staring back at me. It was clear she had no intention of backing down. She wasn't just trying to win. She was trying to dismantle every piece of my life, brick by brick. That afternoon, I walked into HR with a mix of frustration and determination. Linda, the HR director, motioned for me to sit down. Her sharp eyes scanned me, giving nothing away as she slid a document across the desk. "We received this complaint yesterday," she said, her voice even. "It's serious, Chris." "Serious?" I repeated, barely able to keep the tension out of my voice. "It's fiction." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "Are you saying these allegations are false?" "Completely," I said without hesitation. "My wife and I are going through a nasty divorce, and this is her way of retaliating." I pulled out my phone and laid everything out. Screenshots of her text with Jake, hotel receipts, and a timeline that painted a clear picture of her deceit. Linda's expression shifted as she went through the evidence, her initial neutrality softening. "We'll investigate this thoroughly," she said after a pause. "For now, just keep things professional." Leaving her office, I felt a mix of relief and frustration. Kelly's aim wasn't just to hurt me emotionally. She wanted to destroy my career. But I wasn't going to let her lies dictate my future. That evening, sitting in my dim motel room, I called Mark, my lawyer. "She's filed a false HR complaint," I told him. "This isn't just a divorce. She's trying to ruin me." Mark's tone was steady, grounding. "Unfortunately, this isn't uncommon. We'll counter it. Do you have everything documented?" "I do," I replied, scrolling through the photos and files on my phone. "But I'm thinking about going public. She's telling everyone I'm abusive, and I need to set the record straight." Mark hesitated. "If you do that, Chris, it'll be messy. Once it's out there, you can't take it back. Are you sure you're ready for that?" I sighed, the weight of the decision heavy on my shoulders. "I'm ready. She doesn't get to ruin my name just because I caught her cheating." The next morning, I drafted a carefully worded message. It was short, to the point, and backed by evidence. I explained the situation without diving into unnecessary emotions. Alongside the message, I attached a few pieces of proof: screenshots of Kelly and Jake's texts, a hotel receipt, and her HR complaint paired with my timeline disproving her claims. I sent it to our mutual friends, family, and colleagues. It was a risky move, but it was the only way to reclaim control of the narrative. The responses came flooding in. Most were shocked, some outraged, but the overwhelming sentiment was support. "I had no idea. Stay strong, Chris. She tried to tell me you were controlling, but now I see the truth. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this." Kelly didn't take it well. That evening, she called me, her voice laced with rage. "How dare you?" she hissed. "You think airing our private life makes you look good?" "Private?" I shot back. "You made it public the moment you started spreading lies." "I didn't smear you, Kelly. You did that all on your own." Her tone shifted, venomous now. "You're going to regret this, Chris. You don't know what I'm capable of." "Keep threatening me," I said, my voice calm despite the adrenaline rushing through me. "Every word is just more evidence." I hung up, my heart racing. Her threats didn't scare me as much as her calmness did. Kelly wasn't just angry. She was calculating, and I knew she'd keep fighting. Over the next week, her carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Mutual friends started questioning her story. Even Jake, her supposed partner in crime, began distancing himself when he realized the chaos wasn't worth it. Her job, the one she used as a cover for her affair, put her on probation after uncovering inconsistencies in her timesheets. She was unraveling, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. But Kelly wasn't done. One morning, Mark showed up at my motel with a stack of papers and a grim look. "She's filed for spousal support," he said, dropping the documents on the table. I blinked, stunned. "She's serious? Kelly makes 6 figures. How is she claiming she can't support herself?" "She's also alleging emotional abuse and irreparable distress," he added. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Unbelievable. Mark was unfazed. "It's weak. We'll counter with the evidence we already have." This is only going to hurt her credibility further. The court date arrived faster than I expected. Sitting at the plaintiff's table with Mark by my side, I felt a mix of nerves and resolve. Across the room, Kelly sat composed, playing the part of the wronged woman. But as Mark presented our case, the texts, receipts, and HR complaint, all of it painted a clear picture of her deception. Her lawyer tried to argue emotional duress, claiming her affair was a reaction to my alleged controlling behavior. But the evidence didn't back it up. Every time they tried to twist the narrative, Mark countered with hard proof. Finally, the judge addressed her directly. "Mrs. Carter," he said, his tone stern, "you claim emotional distress, yet you've provided no supporting documentation. Furthermore, the evidence against you suggests a pattern of dishonesty. Do you have anything to say?" For the first time, Kelly looked shaken. Her usual sharpness dulled under the weight of the truth. She stumbled over her response, and it was clear the judge wasn't convinced. When the verdict came, it felt like the air in the courtroom shifted. The divorce was granted with no spousal support. The defamation claim, while not resulting in monetary damages, was ruled in my favor. As we left the courtroom, Kelly brushed past me, her eyes cold. "This isn't over," she hissed. But I knew it was. For the first time in months, I felt free. Moving into a small apartment, I began piecing my life back together. It wasn't much, but it was mine, free of Kelly's shadow. I started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand how I let someone like Kelly into my life and allowed her lies to take root. Months later, sitting on my balcony, I realized how far I'd come. Kelly's betrayal had scarred me, but it hadn't defined me. Those scars were proof that I'd survived. She had declared war, but truth won in the end. And the truth, messy and painful as it had been, was what ultimately set me free.